Welcome to Vogel Voices, a podcast put on by Vogel, which is a nonprofit here in Dallas, Texas. The purpose of the podcast is really to explain the impact that Vogel has on homeless children and their families here in Dallas. Welcome to the 8th podcast of Vogel Voices, a podcast put on by Vogel. Vogel's a nonprofit in the Dallas area, and our mission is to help young children and their families prevent and overcome the traumatic effects of homelessness and poverty. Today we're here to talk about this episode of a really fun thing that we did over the last 10 years. And what we really did was have an idea. We turned it into a tradition in Dallas. And so we're here today to talk about that. So my guests today are Greg Brinkley, the Chief Development Officer at Vogel, and Jason Meyer, who is the President of Cooksey Communication and also a Vogel board member. And I'm Karen Hughes, the CEO of Vogel. So it all started really about 2014, actually. I had moved to Dallas, and I had a young son at the time. And so as Vogel was thinking about other ways to make money, which is one of the things that we do as a nonprofit, is to raise money, we really wanted to do something different. It seemed like, everybody in town had a luncheon or a gala or a golf outing. It's like, what could we do differently? And so we were having that conversation at work, and then at home, it was in the holidays, I remember, and it was like, okay, so what can we do for New Year's Eve or New Year's Day with, I guess, probably a 7-year-old? And there really wasn't anything. Most everything for New Year's Eve and around New Year's Eve either goes around football or, the thing that adults do at the, watch the ball drop kind of thing. Not much for kids to do. But before I was in Dallas, I was in the D.C. area. And in the D.C. area, they had a thing in Alexandria was called First Night. And it was a family event that was on New Year's Eve. And so we decided, well, why? There's not one here. There's one in Boston. There's some in other cities that have what they call First Night. And so I thought, well, maybe we could start a First Night. So we actually then hired a consulting company to help us think through this idea. And actually, through that process, we realized that probably, given the other things that were happening in Dallas, the New Year's Eve was probably not the best time, but why not do it on New Year's Day?
That's right.
And so after that, we really spent literally a year researching what was in other cities, what other people were doing with this consultant company, and came up with the idea that we would create an event for kids on January 1st. On New Year's Day in Dallas. And so we took it to the board. We agreed to try it. We had all of our projections for how we thought it was going to go, which I went back and read, actually. And that was funny to read 10 years ago what I thought versus what was actually the case. But anyway, the reason we're doing this podcast today is because we're celebrating 10 years of Vogel. I really can't believe, Jason and Greg, that it's been 10 years since we started this. So anyway, so it's part of the 10th anniversary. We wanted to kind of talk about this and really kind of from whence we've come, because there's a lot of great stories about day one. So Greg, you were there.
I was there.
So tell me a little bit about the discussion and what, we ended up doing in terms of what we learned from the research and what our vision was and that kind of thing about it.
Well, I can tell you that at the development team meeting where this really went from being an idea that we had floated to let's actually put this thing on. And I remember just being like, wow, this is going to be an amazing event. And wow, this is going to be one of the hardest things I think I've ever done in my entire life. But I think the excitement completely drowned out any hesitations or fear of doing something this big at this scale. And I think what really drove that excitement, and Karen, you talked about, we literally spent a year researching what should this event look like. And we went and looked at festivals and fairs and family activities across the country here in the local DFW market, and really started to think what are kind of the best of the activities, of the logistics, of the agenda. And in this process, it just created this level of excitement about what our event could be. And to your point, there is nothing in our Metroplex on New Year's Day that caters to children and families. And since Vogel serves children and families affected by homelessness and poverty, the concept that we could create an event that was founded on families of our community, helping families that Vogel serves, was just a no-brainer for me. And from the get-go, I was ready to make this thing happen.
Right. So I think after we agreed and kind of said, okay, we're going to go for this and we're going to do it, then one of the first things is that we knew that we had to have a partner to kind of help us get the message out. And, you know, that's the hard thing. We're in the DFW Metroplex. So there's a lot going on. It takes a lot to even make an image to get people to know what's going on, because there's just so much. So we knew we needed experts. So we hired Cooksey Communications, and they were the first group that we hired as our PR and marketing company to really help us get off the ground. We didn't have a name. We didn't have a logo. We didn't have anything. And so we were literally starting from scratch.
We had a vision.
So, Jason, you were there.
I was there,
and,
yeah.
So tell me a little about the kind of things that Cooksey took us through, and decisions we had to make, and how we kind of approached this the first.
Yeah, well, and first, let me just say, you know, what a privilege and honor it is to be able to work with a great organization like Vogel. What you all do for our community, it can't be measured in dollars and cents. It's measured in community impact, and you know, as you look around our community, and you can see Vogel's impact just driving around when you know, and seeing, you know, families that are touched by what you all do. So you know, with that as the backdrop, and the fact that we had done some work with you in the past, when y'all came to us with this idea, I you know, the light bulb kind of went off. First of all, I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time, so I was like, you know, I was kind of already thinking about, like, yeah, we hadn't done anything on New Year's Eve in a long time, because, you know, from about the time they're born till 4, you're pretty busy. But that's the age where, you know, they start to you know, get active and want to do things, and you're always looking for activities for them to do. So when y'all brought this idea to us, you know, our president and CEO at the time, Gail Cooksey, says, "This has got Jason's name written all over it. Well, you need to be engaged on this." And I think, you know, what was really cool is that y'all kind of came to us with some good ideas already. And I think what was really productive about those early sessions that we got together and talked, is that the name of the event came together very quickly. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think day one might have even been kind of on everybody's mind as y'all came to visit us. Then it became like, what's the ideation for this? How do we build a whole creative platform? And
with that, but let me kind of back up the name. But originally the name was Day One Dallas.
That's right.
So we'll get back to why it's now Day One DFW.
And what's really cool is that, I mean, Day One and Dallas, or Day One and DFW, has a great ring to it to begin with. So, you know, we put our creative team to work, and we did quite a bit of research, because, yeah, you know, starting a new event, you know, that doesn't have a tradition yet, it's a lot of work. It is kind of like wandering a hallway in the dark. I mean, you got to figure out a lot of things. And so we really looked at other events, not just on, you know, New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, but really kind of like, how do you build an event like this? We'd had a lot of success with the air show in Fort Worth that was at Alliance Airport. So we had a lot of the bones for how to structure partnerships and sponsorships, you know, that could be beneficial from a paid media standpoint. But there was also, you know, things that we had not worked with before, because it was really kind of emerging, this whole idea of, you know, social media influencers. I mean, you got to remember, this is like the early 2010s, and social media was really just kind of emerging. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, there were social media influencers, but most of them had no more than, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 followers. It's not like today where you've got these people with, you know, several
millions.
100,000 or millions.
Right.
So we had to do a lot of research on that end. We were looking at, you know, sort of the family bloggers, people that were involved in blogging about family events. And there was, you know, a significant amount of research, like, how do you put this thing together, and where can we get the sponsorships, and how can we minimize the actual cash outlay so that Vogel gets the bigger benefit? Mm-hmm. And And so I think, that was the first couple of at least 8 weeks of us working at the beginning to kind of, and I think we started at the beginning of that year. It might have been like February or is it 2014? Is that right? Yeah. So it's kind of at the beginning of that year. So that was kind of the initial impetus that we did. And of course we came back with the sort of the ideation of the day one mock-ups and the creative deck for it. But
the tag which was come out and play on New Year's Day, which is what we still use today. That's 10 years later is a big thing. And so again, I think the branding with the colors and the logo, that really didn't take long, if I remember. That was we all coalesced around that. I think one of the things that we learned some lessons on the original marketing and media, we started really early, and I think we probably had to do that the first year because it was new. But so we did TV, we did billboards, we did but we also went to a lot of events throughout the year, and that took a lot of effort. But what we've now found is we now have gone through this 10 years from now is you really don't have to start the media push on this till right before Christmas, really, because we get everything ready. But most people aren't making decisions about New Year's Day until right before the 2 weeks before, so we can really concentrate our media. And I think the other thing, Greg, one of the things that WFAA has been literally from day one, day one, in 2016, they were our media partner, and they have already signed on for this year. So they have been there every year, and that has been a huge boost with the commercials that they give us during that time, as well as some of the other marketing things. But we also learned a lot about how to market this, and it's really what we call mom's marketing, because, at the end of the day, like you said, it's who makes the decision as to what, Dad would just as soon sit and watch football on New Year's Day, but Mom's already had the kids out of the house. They've been out of school for a couple of weeks, and it's like, can we find something they can do? Number one now is to get them off their screens and get them doing something that's fun. And so what we really realized is that that's a great, with influencers and people, it's the ones that the moms are involved in, because they're really, doing the marketing for that. So anyway, I think you learn a lot, because as you know, Jason, in your business, in this market to penetrate, it is very expensive.
It is, yeah. This is the number 4 media market in the country. And, you hear people talking about DFW being bigger than Chicago before too long. It's not going to get any easier. So it is definitely, it's got to be a multi-pronged effort, and it's got to be efficient.
Yeah. Because again, as a nonprofit, we don't have a lot of tons of corporate kind of money to spend a lot on media. So we have to really depend on a lot of our partners in order to do this. So, Greg, at the beginning, you were responsible for raising the money for this.
Sponsorships.
So how did you go about, with on a business that was literally starting, and we couldn't, a lot of times you go into a corporation or talk to marketing people and you show them, here's your sheet. This is how many impressions. You got to talk their language and how many eyeballs are going to see this. And when you start out, you have nothing.
We had zero.
So talk a little about, how you went about getting our initial sponsors, and, who were some of the initial people that believed in us. And for some of them, they still are with us.
That's
Even
correct.
for 2025, they've already committed. So that's been great. So talk a little bit about the sponsorship recruitment.
So I think the first thing to share is, we sat down and put together a strategy. And so on one hand, we had to put together a pretty robust list of who are the companies that we were going to approach. Are these companies that are passionate about the mission of Vogel? Are these companies that tend to want to have brand recognition with children and families? Are these companies that have a big presence in the Dallas-Fort Worth area? Are there companies that typically, as a part of their advertising and a part of their community engagement, they sponsor other events? And so we put together a very, very, very big list. And quite honestly, you just go to work and you just start reaching out and making a lot of calls, sending a lot of emails, talking to a lot of people. And we're ultimately trying to reach the decision makers of those companies to just sit down and have an exploratory conversation, not only to share what this event is and why it's so important to Vogel, but really learn what's important to the companies in terms of what they're looking for as a part of being a representative, a partner in an event like Day One DFW. But more specifically, Karen, you mentioned one of the challenges. This is a brand new event. And so why is a company going to look at Vogel and what we're doing and have confidence that this event is going to be worth their investment? And so one of the things that we looked at was, one, while we didn't have metrics from our marketing plan the previous year, because there was not a previous year, we put together our plan of what we intended to do. And so we could sit down and show them this is the in-kind that we've been gifted. So a major plus was our partnership with WFAA, who was one of the first organizations we met with. And when they signed on, that gave us immediate credibility that the ABC affiliate here in Dallas is the media partner of this event. So that was a big check mark on this event has credibility. 2, we actually went and met with Kimberly-Clark, who had been a sponsor of Vogel and some of our philanthropic events that we do for many, many years. And we shared with them the vision of this event and what we were going to do, and they said we would love to be a part of it. So that was a big check mark. Now we have a Fortune 500 company with an amazing reputation that has come on at one of our highest sponsorship levels. The third thing that we did that I think really helped our credibility is we reached out to individuals like Mike Rawlings, who is the mayor of Dallas, Tim Brown, an NFL Hall of Famer who played for the Los Angeles Raiders and now lives in Dallas and has been a Vogel supporter. We got him on board, and then Tom Falk, who was the CEO of Kimberly-Clark Corporation at the time. And those 3 individuals became kind of our first families of the Day One DFW event. So when I was meeting with companies and corporations, I could sit down and talk about, of course, what we do at Vogel, what the Day One DFW event is going to do for this Metroplex and how it's going to promote our mission, what it can do for your company. And oh, by the way, here are the companies and individuals that are involved that have given their stamp of approval into what we're doing. So really, we had a pretty powerful case for support coming out of the gate, but it took a lot of work to put that together. And then the last thing that I'll share, and this is I think a strength that Vogel had that maybe other organizations looking to start an event may not have, but we have a history of throwing very, very successful philanthropic events. And so in talking to a company, if they say, hey, this is your first year putting this event on, I can say, yes, it is. However, at the time, we had 25 years of experience putting on our arts performance event, which is an event that raises millions of dollars, and over the course of the years raised tens and tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in our history. And so all that together, I think, gave us a really powerful case for support.
So we were ready. We had the marketing PR experts. We had Greg with the strategy for fundraising, but I would be remiss in not, the next person I hired was really has added so much to the success over the years of Day One DFW, because it was Marcia Singer. And Marcia's not with us anymore. We lost her last year, and she would be sitting here if she was able to. But Marcia was a wonderful event person and actually did a lot of events in town, the Irish Festival, the Earth Festival, all kinds of things. Marcia knew how to do events. And so we hired her in her company for the logistics of Day One Day One Dallas at that time. And Marcia was great. She embraced it. She stayed with us as our consultant, I guess, probably for, 6 or 7 of our years. I guess probably up until the 2010 one, or I guess 2020 maybe. Hit. Yeah. But anyway, Marcia was great. Her people were great, and she really guided us, especially because we chose for the location of the first one, Fair Park. And Marcia knew Fair Park better than the people who worked at Fair Park. And she knew all the vendors and all the ways to make that work. So I can't talk about the success of this event without really recognizing Marcia and what she and her team brought to us. And so the one thing is, when we began to create this, we thought big. So the very first Day One Dallas was January 1st of 2016. And so we were at Fair Park, but we also took on a lot of the different buildings at Fair Park. So we were in the Auto Building, the Centennial Building, the Grand Hall, the Women's Museum, we even rented out the Music Hall. So we thought really big. And we also had some of the activities throughout all the buildings. And so, so Greg, tell us some of the other major features of that first event that were really that stand out.
Yeah, I can remember just walking around the event that day, just thinking we have so many activities. There literally was something for everybody. From we had a snow area, we had a zip line, rock climbing walls. We've had a smash car where we had an old junk automobile that people could get a sledgehammer and kids could just let out all of their frustrations of having to go back to school soon on this car. From face painting, we've had all different types of sports activities, live performances from musicians, magicians, animal encounters, reptiles. Karen, I could probably talk for the next 10 minutes and still not list all the activities. And I think that's been, from day one to today, one of the biggest, I think, selling points to this event is there is so much for children and families to do that very rarely will you come to a Day One DFW now, or Day One Dallas back then, event and do all the activities. There's just so much to do. And then, of course, I know we'll talk more about this in the podcast, but the fireworks were just such a special part of the event. And really, I think what we're doing this upcoming year, which we'll talk about, is going to continue that legacy of something that people leave thinking, wow, I just saw something incredibly special.
Yeah, and I think that the first one, we actually thought we could also sell tickets to musical acts. So we kind of tried that with the music hall. And so we had Debbie Ryan, who was
a big Disney star at the time.
Disney star at the time, and she was leaving Disney and taking on music. I think she's kind of given up on that now. But anyway, so we had her. We had Collins Keys, that was a magician, and we also had Cody LaVos, who was a young guitar player, singer-songwriter. And so we sold tickets to that at the music hall. We only did that the first year because we found out that was not as big of a draw as we thought it would be. But, you know, the other thing I liked about the event, and actually we're in a meeting today and kind of maybe revisit this for the 10th anniversary, but we kind of put everything around resolutions. And with kids, you don't really call resolutions because it's more like a promise. But it was, you know, things like eat healthy, have fun with your family, learn something new, be fit, take a break and relax, get organized, just have fun.
We even had good money choices.
Yeah, we make good money choices. And so we actually had the activities around those kind of resolutions for kids. And so we'll be incorporating some of that back in our 10th anniversary events. But like you mentioned about the fireworks became the signature event for this because we did them at 7 o'clock. And again, for kids, most fireworks, unless you're in, I guess, even in 4th of July fireworks are still at 9 or 10, and a lot of kids are asleep by then. And certainly the ones at New Year's Eve are in the, you know, at midnight. So a lot of kids don't get that. So we made sure that they were at 7 o'clock. But the thing that was so unique, and for those that are watching that are from Dallas and you've been to the fair, and you know that the auto building is here and the Centennial building is here, and they're like perpendicular, I guess, to one another.
Correct.
And there's a big blank area in the middle. They put the fireworks on the roofs of the Centennial and the auto building, and also, I guess, the other big building at the end, the Hall of Fame. And so you're literally, not only were they magnificent, they were so magnificent because you were standing right under them.
I told people you feel like you're inside a fireworks show.
Exactly. It was amazing. And people literally that have come since then, it was the fireworks that drove them there because it was so unique and it was all around. And the other thing that we did that was great about it is we always put children's music.
That's right.
To the fireworks. Not, you know, usually it's not, you know, the patriotic kind of music or whatever, but it was all Disney, Star Wars, that kind of music, and the kids loved it. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really big deal and really kind of our signature piece to the fireworks. I remember the first time we thought that, you know, people would come out, and we opened at 9 o'clock and went till 7 when the fireworks went off. We've changed that moving forward because we've realized that everybody was standing there looking at each other till about noon. Because, again, parents have been out the night before, most of them, and get the kids up. And so usually it's around, 12 o'clock before people get moving. And so we now start the event at noon and go to 7 o'clock. I was looking to see, do you remember how many people we had at the first one?
You know, the metric that we have recorded was 10,000 people. And that was based on the police estimate in terms of what they were kind of doing their crowd estimates. But it was difficult to be able to tell because we talked about the first event was so spread out. It was so wide. We knew we had a lot of people there, but because we weren't charging for tickets at that time, we really didn't have a good gauge of what that would be. But we knew that it was a nice turnout for our first year event.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the tickets, and I think that's been a flagship thing of the event from literally the first one, is that, you go to other events, and a lot of times, especially the fair at Fair Park comes to mind, and I know as a parent, you pay the admission or even you get the free ticket at school, but then you walk in the gate, and then within literally 30 minutes, you've dropped 100 or two just for activities and events. I think you announced 20 tickets to ride the Ferris wheel, because it's just expensive. And so we didn't want it to be like that. We didn't want you to have to pay a fee to get in and for you to then have to pay for all the activities. So from day one, literally that's been the philosophy, is that you pay one entrance fee and then that's all you pay. And so, and we've made it very affordable because we want it to be a family-friendly event. That's why we have the corporate sponsors to make it that way. And over time, we've changed it now that all kids are in free. And we'll talk about that for the 2025. But that was some of the things that we did there. So, Jason, I think while you had worked on the event, but you also came as a parent. So what was kind of the reaction from a parent and your child for the very first event?
It was really one of the coolest things we'd done together as a family up to that point. And of course, our daughter was like at the perfect age for it to enjoy it. And so, I remember my wife and I, kind of while we were going through the motions of the day, it was like, it's kind of like reliving our childhood through her eyes. And it was really cool. We were obviously trying to get video B-roll throughout the day. And so there were a couple of cameras that were sort of following a group of us around throughout that day. And when the video was done, it was kind of neat because we had like this little, almost like a videotape of our daughter enjoying like a really, really cool, day in her life. But I think my biggest takeaway beyond just being involved with the event, because, again, going back to Marcia, I think, and how a lot of the event was laid out, she really knew Fair Park. And even though it was spread out, once you got to where you were supposed to go, you could stay there for a while and do a lot of things. And then there was something close by where you could get, food or something else. So you were constantly being able to, do something and stay busy. So you never felt like, bored. And I found myself by the end of the day feeling like I'd gone to Disneyland. Is that sort of, I don't even remember if we had like the pedometers back then. It's like, I'm pretty sure we did well over 10,000 steps. But it was a lot of fun. And we talked about it, throughout the following year. And I think it was something that was very memorable to her.
Yeah, and I think if we talk about the activities, as I look back, because I'm working right now on the list of getting the acts and everybody back for 2025. It's interesting. We talked about like what corporate sponsors has stuck with us. But then if you look at the people that have actually come and helped produce the event in terms of the vendors and the acts and things, there's a lot of people that have been here for every one of the 10 years. And so Wildlife on the Move with his reptiles and snakes, and if you're a snake person, he's been, I think, at every single one. The Star Wars characters have been at every single one. We've had the entertainment, the blow-up Texas Entertainment.
The inflatable slides
and all of them. They've been at every single one. We started with, I think, Grant Price, the magician. Grant's been with every one. We started also, I remember Todd Sinelli.
That's right.
Was also one of the magicians that we had early on. So there's been a lot of the acts that have continued to come back and be partners with us all these 10 years. And it makes it an easy to do now because you just call up, say, hey, it's time. are you back? And absolutely, every one of them will tell you that they got it on their calendar because they've just been a part of it for so long.
Yeah, and Karen, you talk about activities and sponsors. So companies like Encore and Copart, of course, we've mentioned Kimberly-Clark and WFAA have been with us for just about the beginning. But we also had a crazy idea, and I say we, I've got to give credit to you. But we came up with this concept. We've got this big space in one of the buildings. What if we just got a huge supply of cardboard,
right?
And just set it in the middle of this space, and just let families and kids have fun with it. And we knew it was going to be a fun, interesting, creative idea. But what we didn't know is it was going to turn into one of the signature events at every one of our day one DFW activities. But we call it the Cardboard Village. And you can go online and look at pictures of this. But kids and families literally construct castles, houses, you name it, out of cardboard. And this stack of cardboard, and I say a stack, we now have probably 4 or 5 or 6 stacks of it. It literally could take up an entire building if we let it, because it just becomes so massive. And Rogers O'Brien Construction has been the sponsor of that area from the very beginning, so we want to thank them. And then Plustar actually supplies us with the cardboard. But it's one of the funnest. And the tape.
They actually save tape all year for
and so
the cardboard.
It's kind of hard to imagine, but just think of like a supermarket and just fill it with cardboard and cardboard designs, and that's what this thing turns into. And it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and it's, kids, sometimes the simplest things, are the most interesting to them. But I one thing I failed to mention a second ago is just the professionalism of the different, exhibits that you have, the different activities that you have. This is really high quality family entertainment. It's not, somebody just kind of like came off and, came up with some idea and brought it for the first time. These are folks that do these types of activities professionally in most cases throughout the year. So they know how to bring an exhibit that is interactive to kids and it's engaging. And, it's hard for parents to find, this many kind of activities, 365 days out of the year, let alone one day out of the year.
That's right.
So I think it's a really a unique opportunity for families to find kind of what their kids might really be drawn to. And in our case, our daughter was really drawn to art.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different activities, and it's really amazing. And every year we had a meeting this morning of what we're going to bring in new this year and look at it. And like you said, sometimes it's easy. One of the favorite things, not only Cardboard Village, which is just a bunch of cardboard and tape, but kids love it. But we actually have a bingo room, and kids love the bingo. And you would think, well, that's just a simple game they play, but most kids don't play bingo. Only adults play it because it's considered gambling, I guess, so they don't get to go. But we have bingo, and they can win prizes, and that's also very, very packed event. So as we look back on the first year, I think the thing is, I don't know how many steps we did with that, but Greg, you always remember I remember I was over at the Debbie Ryan concert sitting there, and my phone kept blowing up, and I knew something was going on, but you and Sammy were over there managing a crisis that could have been a big crisis, and so you want to talk a little bit about
I will.
that?
So Sammy Gonzalez, who we were hoping could join us for the podcast today, but was unable to, was our director of marketing at Vogel for many years, and one of my closest best friends. And we, I guess we're probably about 10 minutes away from our fireworks starting. And now for this first year of Day One DFW, and I didn't mention this earlier, the fireworks show was a big part of our advertising. So people were very excited about the fireworks, and we had a large crowd that was sitting outside waiting for these fireworks to start. And Marcia Singer came to me and said, Greg, I haven't been able to get a hold of Karen, but I need you to come with me quickly. And so I hop in her golf cart, and we head to where the fireworks are going to be taking off. And lo and behold, in front of me is the fire marshal. And apparently there was a scare that there was some type of a gas leak somewhere that they were trying to find. And the fire marshal told me, I don't think we're going to be able to have the fireworks go off today. And I looked at him and I said, can you tell me what's happening? He said, well, I think there's a small little gas leak from a pipe that's underground, over here in this particular area near where we're going to be setting the fireworks off. And so I told him, if I have to go underground and put my finger and hold off this gas leak while the fireworks go off, I'm going to do that, because you do not want to have Karen Hughes come out of the Debbie Ryan concert and find out that the fireworks are not going to go off. And so the fire marshal assured me they were doing everything they could, and they were checking everything they could. And by the grace of God, they came back about 5 minutes later and said, hey, it was a false alarm. Everything's good to go. The fireworks are going to take off. And so with that, I breathed a huge sigh of relief. And as we talked about earlier, it's to this day maybe the coolest fireworks show that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, and we can't do it now, and we'll talk about that later, but that was always the hold your breath every year.
That's right.
About fireworks, because you don't think about it, but there's a lot of effort going into it. They have to set up the whole day. And then you wait to see what the weather is. Mm-hmm. And so I think we've really only had, out of the 10 years, 1 year that the fireworks could not go off.
And that was due to wind.
And there was nothing we could do about it. And actually, that was the year we were going to do 2 shows, one in Fort Worth and one in Frisco, actually.
Correct.
And both fire marshals on both sides called it at the end. And, with the fire marshal, it's just you learn to say,
what
yes,
they
sir.
What they
it's
say
whatever
goes.
that's going to happen. So
that's right.
But I think that's pretty amazing that with all the kind of weather that we have here in Texas, you never know what's going to blow through. Even on the same day that started off sunny, and then suddenly you're about ready to do fireworks, and it's got this now norther coming
That's
through.
Right.
But we did learn a lot. The first event was awesome. I won't ever forget it. But we did learn a lot from that. First of all, we learned, our budget numbers were off, big time. We probably went too big at the beginning, and we scaled it way back, even though it's now a big event. It was still just having it in so many buildings and so many different things. It was just too big. I mentioned about the music acts didn't, buying separate tickets for that didn't work. We still now have music attached to it, but we don't have the bring in the big acts that we have to pay a lot of money for. And so, again, like I mentioned, we learned a little bit about the marketing, about, we could scale that back in terms of who we're actually, what's the target market for this event. But one of the things that came out is that people absolutely loved the event.
That's right.
And that was the biggest thing that we wanted out of it, to say, hey, people will do this and they will come. And we got tremendous reviews for it. But, I've been doing this for a long time, and not just this event, but being a CEO, and you never want to have to go back to your board and say, this was what I thought was going to happen, and here's the report, and this is actually what happened. And we did lose money on that first event, and but I didn't go back with just, okay, woe is us, we did this and lost money. We sat down before we went back and said, okay, how are we going to turn it around? How are we going to do it different? And actually, Jason, I think you actually put this together. I was reading this today, was the debrief report from the very first one. And actually, I was telling Greg and them at a meeting this morning, I said, there's some good stuff in there. We need to go back and review that. But we went back to the board, and I said, we have lost money, but I feel like it's an investment in this event. Anybody that you talk to that does an event for the first time is going to lose money. Maybe not as much money as we lost, but I've done a lot of things that were challenging in my career. But going to that board and explaining that I've lost this money, but not only did we lose money, but we think we should do it again, and which we did, and the board bought it, and now 10 years later, it isn't. Not only is it a wonderful event, it actually adds to the revenue.
That's right.
We make money on this event now, and I remember in the second year, we actually broke even. And anybody I've talked to has never done an event this size that actually broke even.
That's
but I think it was because we were willing to look at it closely and say, this didn't work. We don't need to spend money here. And so I think we did a good job about that, and to be able to create the vision. But I think the thing that has driven this event all along is that it really serves 3 purposes. One is there's so much about what Vogel did. What Jason talked about is how important our work is to the Dallas community. But there's still people that come, and we do it every single day. We have tours, people come through, and they're like, I had no idea. I've been here in Dallas forever, never knew Vogel existed, and the kind of programming you do for kids in poverty and homeless kids, had no idea. So the one thing we know about Day One is that it gets us more awareness, more media attention, more anything than anything else we do. And so for one reason alone, it brings that awareness to the Vogel brand and what we do. And secondly, it allows us to raise money in a different way, because even for sponsorships, Greg, when you go after sponsorships, for Day One, we go after through a different door of a sponsor. So one sponsor may tell us that, hey, we don't, so many corporations now have different pillars for what they give programmatically to, and we might not fit that pillar with the education and early childhood stuff that we do and family support. But if you can go through the marketing door, you're dealing with a different group of people, you're dealing with a different group of a pot of money. And so with Day One, we found out that that's the case, because there's so many people that come out. When you've got, 5,000 to 10,000 people coming out to an event, people pay attention to that. And from an eyeball perspective, they want that on their brand. So it allows us to raise money for something that does not bifurcate the money we're raising for our regular gala and our other money. But I think it's also, to me, it's just a way for us. So it is a fundraiser for Vogel. And the other thing it does, to me, it's like a gift we give back to the community. We could not do what we do here in Dallas and without the support of this Dallas community. And we're so lucky that Dallas is such a philanthropic community. But and in a way, we keep the price low, because to me it is, we're giving this back to Dallas. And so for those, that's kind of been the foundation, starting out with the very first year, and that's the message I gave the board when I went to them and said, yes, this cost us money, but this is why this is important. This is why we need to keep doing this. And that has stayed true to now 10 years later. So, so now we moved on. So we did it again. And we did we actually did 2017, 2018, and 2019 at Fair Park. And like I said, we were able to break even. We scaled it back a lot and just really began to use the two buildings, the auto building and the
Centennial building.
Yeah. So, Greg, can you remember some of the other ways we kind of scaled it back and other things?
I think one of the big things, after doing the event the first year, we were able to look at it and say, okay, what are the activities that we had? What did people really flock to? What were important, and what were maybe some areas that we thought were going to be big hits that weren't? I'll never forget this. I pushed so hard that we had a sports area with, I think we even had beer provided so that dads that were coming out on New Year's Day could sit and watch their football games. And you know what? I think we had 3 or 4 people throughout the day that were sitting there watching sports. All the dads that came out were playing and enjoying the activities. So again, we realized we don't need that aspect. And I think we're really just getting to the why. Why were families coming out to this event? What were the activities that they really were focused on? And I think that helped us to scale back.
Yeah, and also the hours, like we already mentioned, is scaling back just the hours that were there.
And I think just in terms of the space, it was things, we had a lot of pipe and drape that first year. It was expensive. It looked really pretty. But we asked ourselves, is that necessary? Do people even want that when they come to an event? And I think you could ask most people, and they would say, what was that? Well, I don't even know what pipe and drape is.
Right.
Well, okay, we don't need it. Let's move on.
Yeah, so as we look back about all the different things that we've done at when we were at Fair Park, and it was a great home for the event for a long time, because we also had, the whole issue of would people come down to Fair Park, and we didn't have that problem. And actually, what we found was we didn't have many people coming from the neighborhoods around Fair Park, because we literally had all over the Metroplex.
We did.
That was some of the data that we got from who was there. I think the other thing, we learned how to count the crowds better in terms of our ticketing and things. So now you do a ticket. Everybody has a ticket. The kids are free, but they still have a ticket.
That's right.
So that we can actually get accurate counts, which we didn't do. We even tried. Remember that year that Sammy we were going to do that
geoframing, yeah.
And I swear it said we had some amazing numbers, and I'm like, I think it counted everybody, the geoframe, because it was at the kind of beginning, like you said, of all that kind of technology. Yeah. I think it counted everybody that was on the DART train.
On the DART train or on the road that was passing by. I think it was capturing people that weren't out.
So we remembered that, and then I remember the year we even got Fletcher's Corn Dogs to come out. Do you remember? They came out and gave things for us. And then we had the coldest day, literally. And I don't know if I tried to find it out. I still couldn't remember if it was 2018 or 2019. But it literally was the coldest day in Dallas.
That's right.
And one of the coldest days. And I remember getting the call. And, I mean, it was we're talking like cold, like 12 degrees or whatever.
I want to say it was close to single digits.
Yeah, and the heat was out. I got the call that the heat was out in the auto building. And I'm just like, and there's like, oh, never mind. And I mean, it'll be okay. And I'm like, no, it's not going to be okay. We're going to freeze to death. So, but again, we had people out there in the ticket booth having to, in the cold, and we didn't know if anybody would show up. And lo and behold, we did it anyway, and they came.
We had a huge turnout.
Even on the coldest day. So,
well, speaking of not knowing who's going to show up, I think that's one thing that's exciting about day one is every year we have more new people showing up, whether it's media, TV, radio, print. Everyone comes out, and sometimes you'll get a marching band that will show up that you had no idea that was coming.
Oh gosh,
you want to tell that story, Karen?
I'll never forget the day that we were working with this other group that was a partner, and they were going to do, they did contests for marching bands. And so they were going to be one of the partners, and so they were going to do this stuff outside, I think. Mm-hmm. Then they decided that they were going to come inside. So all of a sudden, we've got all this going on, and they decided to bring the marching band through the I guess it was through at Fair Park through the auto building and Centennial Building.
Jason, this was a full-on high school band.
Everybody was like, "Why are you doing this?" And the kids were screaming, and because especially kids with sensory issues, it was not a good thing. Well, we got lots of feedback from moms about that, and we're like, we took the bullet for it, but it was
loud. Yeah,
it was not. It was not planned.
It was loud, and it was just amplified inside the auto building.
Yeah.
So it was one of the loudest things I think I've ever heard.
So anyway, we had a lot of good memories of being at Fair Park, and so you probably wonder, well, why aren't we at Fair Park anymore? Greg, so tell us a little bit about what happened in 2020 for day one, 2020.
Well, I think it initially started with with the Dallas Stars, who are good friends of ours, but a lot of people will remember very fondly the Winter Classic. And this is the big outdoor hockey game that the NHL selects a city each year, and it is a big, big, big event. And so Dallas was selected to be the host of the Winter Classic. And as a partnership, I think, with NBC has, and I'm saying NBC, it was one of the major television networks that was hosting the event. If you're going to do the Winter Classic on January 1st, there can be nothing else going on at Fair Park. So that left us at Vogel.
Well, they leased the whole park.
Yeah, they take the whole thing over.
They took the whole thing.
You're right. So that left Vogel without a home for the day one Dallas event. And so we had to sit back down and say, okay, well, now what? And the idea came, well, what if we took this and made it more than just a Dallas event? And what if we looked at a location maybe further north? And so we have, over the course of that time, made a lot of connections with people in the Frisco and Plano area. And we reached out to our friends at the Frisco Rough Riders and also made connections with the Frisco CVB, who introduced us to the people over at the Embassy Suites Convention Center in Frisco. And after many conversations and lots of research, we decided let's move the Day One Dallas event to Frisco. So we actually called it Day One Dallas in Frisco, of course, benefiting Vogel. And for 2020, we actually held the event at the Dr. Pepper Ballpark and inside the Embassy Suites Convention Center, and it was quite the undertaking. But tell me, Karen, what are some of the things you remember from that year?
Well, I remember that we had all these activities planned because, again, every venue has its own unique things, and so we were going to use the outfield.
That's right.
For the these bounce houses and Zorb balls and all this kind of stuff and giant Jenga and all that. And then they told us, well, if it rains the day before or the day of, any moisture, you may not use the field. And, I mean, it was like, I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's like grass. No. And so they looked at, I remember looking across the guy that's in charge of the grass at the ball field, and he's like, you're not getting on the grass if there's any, And so it's, I remember the whole grass thing, and we already were worried about the fireworks, but that there was a great place for fireworks because people could literally sit in the stadium and they did it out on because they do fireworks there all the time. And so we were able to partner with the Rough Riders fireworks partner and actually were able to get a good deal on the fireworks because they had a major contract because they do it every week or whatever at the end of the game. But I do remember, which I didn't know about, that is that they had a fire.
That's right.
During the fireworks.
So apparently some of the fireworks went off before they got in the air.
You know why the firemen are there? Because you always have to have the fire truck there. And I didn't know it, but there was they caught the grass on fire outside the stadium. And but the fireworks went off anyway. So, but I also remember that was a cold event because we used the convention center, the Frisco Convention Center at the, Embassy Suites, which was a great space. And that worked out really well for us because a lot of the things, they were having a big party the night before for New Year's Eve, but because it was a hotel, we couldn't get in until that next morning to set up. And so I remember having to do that really quickly. But all their AV stuff was already set up from the night before, which they didn't charge us for because we were able to do that. So I remember that, but it was a long hike between the convention center and we had activities between being able to walk between the convention center and the ballpark. But that was always a big risk because even at Fair Park, if it rained or the water was, you could still go into the buildings. When you're at the ballpark, there wasn't much places to go.
Yeah, if it rained, that aspect was going to get taken
that
away.
was going to be a big issue. And so we did it there only 1 year because that was January of 2020.
It was January 1st, 2020.
And so as we all know, March 2020, the whole world changed and hadn't quite changed back yet. And so, as we were planning on, are we going to come back and do it this way? And actually, we decided not to. We thought we would go we had gone and talked to the Irving Convention Center about possibly doing it there. Literally had the contract on my desk.
That's right.
Ready to sign for the 2021 event. And then COVID happened. So we knew that I couldn't have one building that got 5,000 people in it. That was never going to fly. And so, again, we had to get fairly creative. And so, Greg, you want to talk a little bit about what we did for 2021 and 2022 based on COVID?
As we thought through the event, we realized we couldn't do an event with that many people in one place. But at this point during the pandemic, we had seen businesses reopen and were utilizing safety practices and spacing and whatnot. And Main Event Entertainment, which is a big entertainment facility with several locations here in the Metroplex, we're really pushing to get people back in their facilities and, to start getting families together, having fun again. It just so happened that I used to work for Main Event prior to joining Vogel Alcove, and one of our board members, Andrew Locke, actually was on the board of Main Event at the time. And so we started talking, and the idea came up that, what if we reached out to Main Event to see if they would be interested in hosting small Day One DFW, or Day One Dallas, I should say, events at their various Metroplex locations. And so we came together as a team and went through the strategy and discussed this could be a good opportunity, one, to keep the event going. So this way we don't have to cancel the momentum that we've been building over these years. But we also now would be able to utilize to have an event in Frisco, one in Louisville, one in Plano, one in Grand Prairie, one in Fort Worth. So we could really kind of grow the event throughout the Metroplex, which I think led to an exciting change in terms of branding and the name of the event as we look to see, okay, even in a pandemic, can we find a positive and make this event even bigger?
Yeah, so, and that had its own challenges because we had to totally remarket that and which ones you would show up to and how staffing, and again, because you didn't have the big rooms that we had, so we had a lot less activities because we really wanted to focus on the activities you could do at
Main Event, which were bowling in the arcades, laser tag,
exactly. So
things
the
like
event,
that.
we did have a room where we could have the magicians and the reptile guy, and we did different ones at different of the locations, kind of in the party room. that they did.
And then we did the first year, we did it virtually. Remember,
yeah,
we also had a virtual
virtual aspect. That was fun, learning how to do that. So we had the virtual aspect of that as well. So you could watch it online and do activities and see
we had activities you could do at home with your kids.
So we worked on that. So thank goodness for Main Event. We'll always be
really saved us.
Very appreciative of Main Event and their support, because otherwise the event would have been gone dark, and whether it could have survived again, after all the work we had done of getting the name out. And
well, so, that was a strange time too.
Yeah, exactly.
And being able to do it at different locations with maybe a smaller footprint might have been more appealing to families who maybe were not yet ready to go to some major,
Right.
Yeah.
It was just
and the other thing was but the biggest thing we had to work with Main Event. So I think we didn't do it all day. We only did it from till 5 o'clock, or
I think so.
I think it was
5 or 6.
Because interestingly enough, that is like their Super Bowl day. In those kind of places, that they have a huge, that's where they get a lot of their revenue on those days. So it was very generous of them to let us do that. But when we did it there, we had to change the name because we were no longer in Dallas. We were in Fort Worth. We were in Frisco. We were in Grand Prairie. And so that's hence how we had to rebrand, and we became Day One DFW from there. Were able to, that first year with Main Event, we then had to figure out how to do the fireworks.
Yeah,
remember? But we then went to our friends at
FC Dallas Toyota Stadium.
In Toyota Stadium, and they let us do it in the because I can't remember, there was some conflict with going back to the Rough Riders, but anyway, we went and did that, and we did it in the fire. They let us shoot it off at FC Dallas, and again, they know how to do fireworks at FC Dallas as well, and they were great, and let us do it there, and had a big crowd, and so that way, we didn't really know where to, because people were all over the Metroplex doing these, and so, but we just picked Frisco as a place because it was a place that people knew there could be fireworks, and you could drive in, park in the parking lot, watch the fireworks. And the other thing, we could still do our music, which was a big deal with the fireworks, and we were able to partner with the city of Frisco because they do the thing where you drive through the lights across the street from the stadium. And
you have the Christmas music playing on the radio
they have
station.
A FM transmitter doing that, so we were able to play it through their thing. They stopped their music in time for our fireworks, and so we had a partnership with that. It is just amazing to me, all the people that over the 10 years have stepped up and helped make us being partners to make this all work. So that was the city of Frisco. The mayor of Frisco was very supportive of us doing it there. But then after after COVID was done, we hoped, and we could move back to one thing. After we'd looked at a lot of things, we felt like the Irving Convention Center was kind of right in the middle of the Metroplex. And it was great. The city of Irving and, the visitors, people in Irving, they were really very supportive of us moving it there. So the first year that we did it there, I guess, which was 2022, we just did it on 2 floors in the Irving Convention Center. And so, Jason, you actually came to the event at the Irving Convention Center and saw it. So what's your take on that? Is kind of its forever home, if you will?
I think that's a really great, destination location for Day One DFW. Right, first you touched on it right away, which is it's right in the middle of the Metroplex, and second, it's the scale of the space is perfect for this. You've got, are you doing it on 3 floors now? I think, and is that right?
We're filling up the whole
the whole thing. So
whole thing.
And I guess that's 4 floors, isn't it? Right. I was going up and down the escalator looking at it, and there was the proximity of each space. Makes it real easy to get around, and the parking situation is really easy there. You park and you can just walk right in, and then you don't have to worry about the weather no matter what.
That's
and
my
I think
number
that's
one thing.
Exactly.
That just takes that out of the equation. It's a great space for it. It really is, and anybody can be there in about 15 minutes from anywhere in the Metroplex. So it just works. I thought it worked really well. The other thing too is it's got a lot of open space around it. So if you want to do something outside, you know, you've got that flexibility, and it's near Lake Carolyn and all the things that the Las Colinas complex offers.
Yeah. So, but it was one of and again, trying to keep the signature fireworks was a challenge, and Jason helped save it that year. But as we moved over there, because, you know, we had thought, okay, well, there's all this great space right outside, the space you were just talking about, that we could do for fireworks, and we just need to talk to who owns the space. Well, we found out that they had sold the space. I guess what bank's over there now?
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo is going up.
Is going up there, and
maybe that'll become a big sponsor one of these days,
right? Exactly. But anyway, so they had just bought, the deal had just gone through, so there was really no anybody to call to know who would let us go over there and do the fireworks. But there was, Jason came through and found one little plot of land that they had not sold at that point. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I just, you know, and then there were a lot of people behind the scenes helping with it too. We, you know, because we're based in Irving, we were able to, you know, very quickly figure out what potential spaces could be used. And we went down a list, and the one that eventually ended up being used was actually they were the hardest folks to get a hold of. But they were, you know, very gracious in allowing that to happen. I think, you know, anytime you're personally invested with an organization like we've been with Vogel, you're just going to do whatever you can to possibly make it work. And I think that, you know, they could see how important it was to us that this got done. So we just were able to, I think, articulate and sell like, hey, this is a really big deal. A lot of people are going to be disappointed if we can't do this, and so it was great that somebody came through.
Yeah, so for that year we were able to do the fireworks, but then they sold the little plot of land, and so now there was no place to go. The only place, you know, we would talk to the city of Irving, and they have to do it out on Lake Carolyn, like you said. But in order to use Lake Carolyn, you literally have to build we learned all about this, but you have to build a launch. A boat ramp,
little barge.
You have to, and then they're done on a barge, not on the land. You have to go out in the middle of the lake and do it. But in order to get the barge out there and the boat to get the fireworks out there, you have to build a boat ramp. And it was just like all I could see was more dollars and more dollars and more dollars. And so we were like, okay, we're not doing this. So anyway, so for 2023, this past year. We did it at Irving Convention Center for the second time, and but we had a new idea. So, Greg, you want to talk a little bit about what we did for that since we couldn't do the fireworks?
We couldn't do fireworks, so we thought, what if we did a children's dance party and just made a really, really fun end-of-the-event celebration where kids could just dance and be crazy and run around and have a good time. And we connected with our friends at Emerald City Band, who, if you have lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for any amount of time, you know that the Emerald City Band is the top party band in our Metroplex. And so they came out and put on an amazing show. And we did it on I think it was on the 4th floor of the convention center. We had a light-up dance floor that the kids got to run around and play and have fun. They all had their little glow sticks and little glow necklaces that we had provided during the day. And, you know, Karen mentioned earlier that we always have roaming characters, from the Star Wars characters. Last year we had Mickey, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy, and the Mario and Luigi. They all joined Emerald City on stage and were dancing and having a good time. So it really was a fun way to end the celebration, and just had a really great time just dancing and just cutting up and getting loose. But that being said, as great as it was, the fireworks and really having something exciting in the sky has always been kind of the signature of the day one event. And so after it was over, we thought, well, we'll always have live music at this event, but there's got to be a way that we can do something that brings back the excitement and the power of the fireworks show.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of brings us to January 1st, 2025, which is coming up soon. And it will literally be our 10th birthday for this event. And as you know, as we've talked all morning through this session about all the things we've done to get here. So it really is a celebration for us. And so we've got some really neat things coming up. And one of the things we're going to have is a drone show. And so instead of fireworks, because they don't require a lot of land and fire marshals and all that kind of stuff, we're going to have the drone show. And the thing that's fun is I was like watching America's Got Talent. If you're a American Got Talent fan, and there was the company on there that had the drone show. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, they are awesome. And I thought, that name sounds familiar. And come to find out, I went back to my office, looked at our contract, and so it was the same people that we have coming for Day One DFW, Sky Elements, that got literally, I think they were third, and won the third at Day One, America's Got Talent. Now, I will say, this is kind of a disclaimer, what they presented for America's Got Talent was probably not in my budget for a drone show. But it is going to be a neat.
Ours is going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. They're great at what they do, and so it'll be something totally new this year. Not doing the fireworks, but we will end it with a drone show by Sky Elements, and so we're very excited about that. It's going to be all based on back to our resolutions, where the different resolutions or promises you make at the beginning of every new year, and so we're excited about that. And then we are going to try a new element. A lot of times people come and there's a lot of people there. And so even though we have a lot of face painters and a lot of people, if you're a parent, everybody wants their face painted. And those poor moms and dads will stand there for hours waiting for their turn to get a face painting. So this year we decided, well, let's try something new since we have all 4 floors now of the convention center, and we don't have to keep one for the dance party because we're going to do something different. So, Greg, tell them a little bit what we've decided to do with that.
So we are going to have a VIP space. And so this will be for families for a purchase of $25 to be able to come and have, this will be limited, by the way, so this way we can control the crowd sizes in this VIP area, but we'll have the face painters, the balloon artists, the tattoo people, so you won't have to wait in line as long to be able to get those, those different types of activities. We're also going to have what last year was one of the most popular activities, which is the slime stations. And so the kids will be able to come and just sit and play in the slime and have a good time up there with that. We'll also have some characters that we talked about that will be there in that VIP area for pictures. So that way you and your family can get down with whether it's, I know we're still finalizing what characters are going to be there. I don't want to spoil or say someone that may be coming that won't be, but they're going to be some of your children's favorite characters from TV and movie, and will be plenty of them. And so you'll be able to get VIP pictures with them as well. And so I think that's going to be a fun area. We'll have some concessions up there too, but it'll be just a spot for families to go and be able to play some unique activities and have some fun with that. Yeah,
and so while the general admission for kids will still remain free. If you want the VIP experience, there will be a cost associated with that, so you'll have to buy a VIP ticket.
And there'll be 2 sessions.
But there's going to be 2 sessions for VIP experience. One at the beginning, 12:30 to 3:30, and 3:30 to 6:30. You'll have to buy that. But we're going to limit the number of tickets that can be sold for that so that you're guaranteed that it truly is a VIP experience. So there'll be a cost for that ticket if you want that. Otherwise, parents are going to be $15 and and kids are free. But if you want a VIP experience for your child, then there's be a cost extra ticket for that. It's just for that. But everybody else, if you don't want that, you're willing to stand in line and not get the special perks.
That's right.
I think we're going to also give out glow things for the kids that do as part of that, because every kid loves the glow things. And so it's going to be a really...
And I'm sure between now and New Year's Day, there'll be 4 or 5 new things that we come up with that we'll add to it that will make it even more fun.
Experience.
That's
so,
right.
But a lot of people wait to buy those tickets on the very first day or on site or right as they're driving down the road on our ticketing system. But I would highly recommend getting pre-tickets, because those are going to be limited, so that people really will have a VIP experience. So we're excited for our 10th birthday. And so, Jason, if you were talking to parents, why would you tell parents that they should come out and play with us on New Year's Day for our 10th birthday celebration?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would tell them is, your kids are going to have fun. They're going to have a blast. The second thing is it's really for a great cause. It's families helping families. And, that's a New Year's resolution in itself. If you're wanting to start your year off right, what better way than to help some families that may not, be as fortunate as you are. And again, I go back to the fun part of it. What other great New Year's resolution can you have but spend time with your kids on the first day of the year, get their year off to a good start.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's all around, it's just a great event.
So, and the reason we're able to, keep the cost very low on this event is because of our generous sponsors. So, Greg, if a business is listening and wants to get involved, how would you tell them to get involved to become a sponsor?
Please reach out to us at Vogel. You can go to our website, which is www.day1dfw.com. On that website, you can actually click on my email address, which is gbrinkley@vogelalcove.org. And you can send me a message directly, and I'd be happy to meet with you and share the various sponsorship levels and benefits associated. And, of course, we're happy to customize things to make sure that you're getting the value that you need from the event. Some of our sponsors like to come out on site and have a booth or an activity where they're able to talk to people and generate leads or just do different types of promotions. Some sponsors say, hey, we don't actually want to have our employees working on New Year's Day. We want them to come out and attend the event. So can we just do a naming right? Can we be the stage sponsor or the rock climbing wall sponsor or the VIP section sponsor? The answer is yes. So we have naming rights throughout the entire event. So many fun things to do. And this year we also are inviting vendors to come out. And so if you have a booth that you tend to go to events to sell items, reach out to us and we'll share with you how you can get involved and come out and promote your products at our Day One DFW event, which will be a blast. And then really not so much a sponsorship, but we also have a program called the Friends of Day One DFW. And this can be for businesses or individuals to make a donation of $250 or more. And what this funding does is this allows us to be able to send all of the Vogel families and all of the Vogel kids to this event for free. It covers their transportation costs. It covers any food that we want to be able to provide our families at the event. And just really ensures that they can start the New Year's off as a family and have a great time as well. And so, again, please reach out to me. You can go to our Vogel website or our Day One DFW website, and anyone that you click on an email to will connect you with me, and we'll get you taken care of.
Yeah, and the Friends is very important because we get buses because some of our families, they don't have transportation to come to Irving. And also we want to be able to not just have them do the activities, which are free, but when they see kids with popcorn or corn dogs or whatever else they're eating, it's not fair for them, their parents not to say that they have the money to do that. Mm-hmm. So we really depend on generosity of our donors to become friends so that we can do that. And it's even more important this year because previously we've had just the one location in downtown Dallas, and we have 134 kids and their families down there. But now we have another location that's open in North Dallas at Preston and George Bush, and these children actually are living in an emergency shelter. And so just to have something to get out of that shelter and be able to go do that's fun and take the stress off that parent and the child. So we have even more kids, but that means we have to have two buses kind of going because one's in downtown Dallas and the other is in Plano. So we have even more expense to get them there, but really for them to be able to enjoy that and not have to worry about that they would have to have money and not be able to afford to come. So anybody can become a friend, and we would greatly appreciate that. So anyway, so I guess we've really kind of talked about this. We're excited about from whence we've come. It's just been amazing how we had an idea and we literally created a tradition for New Year's Day in Dallas. And it really is amazing when you sit back and look at it and all the things we've gone, the ups and the downs, but where we find ourselves today. And it's really a beloved event. There are people that will come and tell us that they've been at every one of them. And so we don't really know how to get in touch with those people, but they ought to get a certain button. I've been to all the Day One DFWs for our 10th birthday. But anyway, so we're hope that everybody that's listening will think about coming out and playing and getting involved in this. So Greg, Jason, any last comments you would say to people as we close out?
Come out and play on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
But I would also say, for those individuals that are trying to put on a successful event, and the lessons learned that we talked about earlier, you really cannot overstate. I just think the way that you all have been able to keep your partners engaged through the years, you know, Channel 8 staying on board, and some of your major sponsors and the volunteers. And I think if there's a value proposition from your event, people will stay and they'll stick around. And y'all done an amazing job getting here to 10 years. So congratulations on the
Thank you.
on 10 years of it.
And Jason, I'm so glad you mentioned volunteers because I completely forgot that. But we also, it takes about 100 volunteers to put this event on. And so if you are a parent that's listening and have a kid, especially children at that time of the year, it's, you know, seniors or somebody that's got, they need volunteer hours. We will give them a certificate, whatever they need. Or if you want to come out and volunteer with your family, this is the great thing about volunteering at day one. You can bring smaller children because we can put you in charge of one of the activities and they can help play. And then you just do a shift of, usually we have 2-hour shifts for volunteers, and you get in as a volunteer and then you can go play the rest of the day. So it's a great way to not only starting with a fun activity with your family, but if you volunteer together, it also gives that experience of your child of giving back to the community. So we definitely need volunteers, and you can find out about that on our website as well. So, Greg, any last comments?
My final thoughts are, we just encourage people to find out how they can engage with Vogel, and especially the Day One DFW event. And so companies, sponsorships do so much for our organization. Obviously, they make this event the success that it is. But as we're growing and expanding and serving more children and families in the Metroplex, we just need more people engaged in helping us raise the funds to bring this to life. And for families coming out and play on New Year's Day, your participation helps drive that revenue. It also helps drive the awareness that our organization gets throughout this Metroplex, which is critical for our success as well. And then I can promise you that your family will have a blast at this event. And I think my all-time favorite story happened at the end of the event. I believe it was last year when the event wrapped up, and I experienced this. This little boy turned around and looked at his mom and dad and said, "This was the best day of my life." And then they took off. And that's exactly what I think this event does for so many families and so many kids here in our Metroplex. So, terrific. Jason, I'll reiterate what you said. Come out and play on New Year's Day.
Well, thank you to everyone for listening today and for joining us on this episode of the Vogel Voices and learning about Day One DFW. And so hopefully we will be able to see you on January 1st, 2025 at the Irving Convention Center starting at noon to come out and play on New Year's Day. We hope that you can come back, and we also hope that you will subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of the episodes, and also you can rate this podcast and review it as well. So until next time.